Now 5:30, and I will call our work session to order. And this is a special work session. We have with us this evening members of our Planning Commission as well as members of our Economic Development Commission and our Parks Commission. So it's good to see everybody here. We're going to go around the table and also the audience so that everybody at home knows who's sitting around the table. Elizabeth Couts, Mayor of Burnsville.
Kira Schultz, Burnsville City Council.
Dan Keeley, City Council.
Steve Benke, Planning Commission.
Andrew Montgomery, Damon Farber.
Tom Whitlock with Damon Farber.
Bob Close with Damon Farber.
Dan Walter, Planning Commission.
Vince Workman, Planning Commission.
Bill Coughlin, City Council.
Dan Gustafson, City Council.
Michelle Collins, City Clerk.
Sarah Kiefer, Vice Chair, Parks and Natural Resources Commission.
Brady Folkstead, EDC.
Sandy Coppin, Economic Development.
Chris John, Chair, EDC.
Okay, I'm going to stay on this side because we have commissioners here.
Gary Donaldson, PNRC.
Dan Arnold, Parks and Natural Resource.
Okay, Commissioner? Oh,
Regina Dean, City Planner. Liz Workman, Dakota County Commissioner.
Dina Hardy, City Staff.
Tom Taylor, Burnsville Chamber.
Skip Meanhouse, Economic Development.
Jenny Faulkner, Community Development Director.
Brian Peterson, Burnsville Public Works.
Jenny, I'd ask you to come to the table, please.
Wanted to make room for all the commissioners.
Well, but you're our economic development, you're our community development director, and I know that Dana is sitting back there, but she'll come back to the table also. So anyway, the first item on our agenda, and we go directly to our agenda, is the Burnsville Center County Road 42 Corridor Master Redevelopment Plan Update. Jenny, you're doing the introductions and a high-level overview?
I can do that, Madam Mayor, members of the council, commissioners, and audience. This is a continuation of the creation of the County Road 42 Burnsville Center Corridor Redevelopment Master Plan. This is something we started this summer. We've engaged Damon Farber and company to help us with this. They're experienced in this area and have put together a team of experts for us. When we were last before you, we had a concept plan that was revealed to you that was actually very exciting. I think we all thought that was an exciting start. They have since further refined the plan, expanded the geographic area, which I think kind of gets into a more of a phase 2 approach, which was in your packet, and they're going to go through that briefly tonight. Also, we've further refined kind of some of the goals and objectives as they've spent more time working through the details of the area, understanding the area better, talking to the stakeholders. Certain elements are coming to light more stronger than others, so those have also been incorporated. Our next step is to engage the stakeholders after we check in with this group, property owners, and then to have a public comment, a public hearing session on this, and then we'll be back before the council in December looking for some type of adoption. The next steps of this plan that you'll see in December will include some implementation ideas as well as phasing and probably some more further refinement in any direction that you may give the consultants tonight. So with that, I'll turn it over to Tom, Bob, and Andrew to walk through the PowerPoint.
Very good, and I think, Tom, you're going to be the narrator of the plan, and then
I'll
Bob
pull Andrew and
Andrew
Bob
are
in.
going to be your wingmen. Okay.
Thank you, Jenny, Madam Mayor, council members, and commission members. As Jenny said, we wanted to come before you and kind of give you an update on where we are and really get your feedback again on the direction of the overall plan, but then also ask you some specific questions on sort of what the role of the city is moving forward as we begin to think about how the plan might be implemented. And feel free to ask questions as we walk through this. So I'll just give you a quick update on, and I'm going to move through this. So slow me down if you need to, but I know we're on a tight time constraint here. So I'm going to give you a quick update on schedule. We've continued to get additional feedback from stakeholders within the district, so we wanted to share with you some of the things that we've heard. And then give you, again, a quick update on the market analysis, although I think we covered that pretty well last time. And then we're going to go through the refinement of the vision statement and guidelines, as well as really get into the plan. And that's what we want to reserve the bulk of the time for, is to talk about the plan itself. and then talk about sort of emerging opportunities that we're seeing based on conversations we've had with stakeholders. So with that, just to remind you again, Jenny covered schedule a little bit, but we do have some upcoming meetings with stakeholders and the community at the end of October and beginning of November before we come back to you. And then again, as Jenny said, wrapping up in December. Some of the things that we've heard. So we've continued to reach out to different stakeholders within the district and continue to gather information from the public, the survey that's up on the city's website. So again, some of the things that we've heard from the public, wishing for additional housing opportunities adjacent or within this district, looking at improving just the overall experience for visitors to this district, providing expanded food and beverage opportunities and entertainment, and then as well as improving bike and pedestrian connectivity within the district. Commercial property owners, so we've talked to a lot of the different commercial property owners, and I guess I'll start with the Burnsville Center area itself and then talk about stakeholders sort of outside, north of 42 and east of 35W. I think what we've really learned is that there's a great opportunity here. I think talking to J.C. Penney and Seritage, who has the Sears site, Macy's, they're all really committed to this location. J.C. Penney talked about that they actually have in their plans investment in remodeling the interior that they're looking at. They're all sort of waiting to see kind of what Seritage is doing, and Seritage certainly has some ideas and has shared with us some plans that they have for the site. So we think there's actually great opportunity that's just sort of waiting to happen here. Also south of 42, if you look at Burnhaven where the Buca is, that is another potential site that they're thinking about mixed use on that site, and so they're really encouraged that the city was talking about mixed use. If we begin to look also on the south side, UTC, they're really interested in bike connectivity. They had over 200 bikers as employees, and I think they just had an event locally where they're
in September.
And so bike connectivity within the district was very important to them. Opportunities for lunch for their employees, a lot go to Costco today. We used to go to Burnsville Center, go to Costco today. Frontier Communications sort of said similar things.
They also talked with you not only bike trails but pedestrian trails.
Yes.
To walk. Because they.
Yep, and continued efficiency of County Road 42. They have a lot of employees that come from St. Paul, and that those employees have a certain time they want to spend commuting, and if that extends, they feel like they might lose some of that workforce. So continued efficiency on County Road 42 is very important to them. If you look north of 42, there's a lot of healthy businesses north of 42. Target obviously just finished a remodel. They're committed. So they didn't really have a lot of concerns other than traffic. They want to make sure they like the idea of enhanced pedestrian connectivity, but they don't want it to come at an expense to the movement of vehicles. So that was something that they were really interested in. But also there's obviously opportunities with the Cub site, opportunities with Burnsville Marketplace. They're really encouraged by the mixed use and see opportunities for redevelopment on that site. They would like to see the overall brand of the district enhanced to improve wayfinding and connectivity in the district. And then if you reach out wider, Park Nicollet, Fairview, a lot of their employees will avoid County Road 42 altogether and use McAndrews and other routes to get to those destinations. They feel like they've done a lot for health and wellness on their sites, but would like, if the Burnsville Center, that district evolves in a positive direction, they would want enhanced connectivity to that from a bike and pedestrian point of view. And a lot of they also would like to see a range of housing. They have a lot of young nurses that are coming. They like, they both Fairview and Park Nicollet talked about Southdale and the enhanced housing opportunities there and a wide range of housing. And they'd like to see similar opportunities in this district. So I think all sort of positive input. Those are some of the continued things that we've heard about the district.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna
One moment, Kara?
So you had on there twice the improved efficiency of County Road 42 what do you mean by efficiency? Are you talking about people like being connected to walk and bike, or what are you talking about efficiency?
Thank you for asking that question. So they're talking about the movement of vehicles and trucks on County Road 42.
Got it.
They're concerned about traffic calming, and that will increase congestion.
I think most of them always want the lights to be synchronized. So when they're moving efficiently, and there's not go, stop, go, stop. They want those lights to be synchronized.
That's correct. And something that we've engaged Kimley Horn, our engineering consultant, on is to look sort of outside the system to see if there's other efficiencies to pull some of that traffic off of County Road 42 and continue to use that loop road around this district to improve efficiency.
And perhaps
some of
those
the-
wayfinding signs to help people know that South Cross and McAndrews is that ring road
Correct.
around.
Yep, exactly. I won't talk a lot about market analysis. We talked about this before, but basically this district compares very favorably in demographics, median income to Eden Prairie Center, Ridgedale, Roseville. So there's a market here, and it's just a matter of recapturing that market. They see, Leland Consulting really sees a couple of sort of prototypical things, like Belmar in Colorado, which was a redevelopment, complete redevelopment of a mall. But they also see sort of the hybrid situation, which you see in our market, like Ridgedale, Southdale, that they're gaining efficiencies in the parking lots with reduced parking, which creates open lots to introduce mixed use on those sites. So you see sort of nibbling away at the mall site with the introduction of new uses on the edges and the perimeter. So some of the things before I hand off to Bob here, some of the things that we've heard from this group and other groups as we begin to think about the plan was that it's really a market-driven plan. We're not talking about going in and condemning properties and
that won't
it's really creating a guiding plan that as this district evolves, and there's some current opportunities, what is it that this district is going to evolve into? Also making sure that this is complementary and not in competition with the heart of the city was very important. You've invested a lot in the heart of the city, and that this district should be complementary to that. And also, obviously, responding to stakeholder and community needs, and that there's an opportunity for a public-private partnership here to really elevate the overall plan.
All right, excuse the voice, it's a little bit hoarse. We're gonna quickly go through the revised district strategies that we presented last time for the first time. They've been updated, as Tom says, they're more focused now on what we've heard and learned and what we're understanding about retail trends and those kinds of things. So this first one is, and by the way, we've given this place a name, Center Village. So this first one is.
What did the mall folks think about that?
Well, what do they think? You've been talking to them.
We haven't pitched that to them.
You haven't pitched.
It can still be.
We wanted to talk to you first.
It can still be Burnsville Center in Center Village, but we're trying to convey something that has a little bit more to do with a different scale. So that's what that's about. But so this transformation from an auto-centric into a multimodal, pedestrian-friendly public realm is something we heard from the outset. People want walkable places that are not dangerous to be once you leave your car. And if you can do more than one thing once you park your car, that's a plus as well. So this is really focusing on getting people healthy, getting them out of their cars, making it comfortable to move through this district, inside the mall and connected outside the mall. reinforcing Center Village identity through wayfinding, coordinated branded placemaking strategies. We see a couple of really good opportunities for this, and one is, of course, County Road 42. A ton of people going through there all the time. If we can establish a really positive presence along 42, it's advertising that will resonate with people who are going by. People will understand that there's something going on both the north and south sides of 42 that is worth stopping for. So that's really what this has to do with. And you're seeing an image of a bridge here, because we see one of the real strong possibilities is linking north to south with a true bridge, and a bridge that could become a really iconic symbol of this place, of Center Village, with two neighborhoods, one to the north and one to the south, that are different but connected, strongly connected. So that's this really has a lot to do with that. And then also as you depart 42, knowing where to put your car so that you can get down and start walking on the street or in the mall. Okay?
So let me ask you this. What you're saying is you're going to drop 42 to put the bridge over it?
42 goes over and the pedestrian connection is beneath.
So we're going to tunnel.
But it's a bridge, not a cattle pass. This, as you can see in the image, if it is a true bridge, and this is something that we know takes time and it takes money, but in terms of achieving several things with a single move, albeit an expensive one, this could do that. And we'll show you in plan how it begins to make sense in terms of how people move from north to south. There may be that, to the council member's question about crossing 42, the issues related to that have as much to do with the efficiency of 42 as it does do with the safety of people trying to cross. It is a difficult road to cross.
Yeah.
So we want to look at options. Pedestrian bridges over are difficult because of grade. However, going underneath makes a lot of sense. And we think that there could be this could be a two-stage thing where maybe it's just in the beginning, a way to get through, but we want it to be a strong connection. And I think this is how we achieve that. Okay? Broadening the mix of land uses within the North and South Commons subdistricts, so we are referring to them as the North and South Commons. They are related to one another. They are strongly connected, safely connected, and more things are happening. People are living here, people are recreating here, people are worshiping here, people are shopping here. The food and restaurant scene is a great way, especially in a community like Burnsville, which already has international restaurants that are destinations for people. To be able to bring them to a place like this that could offer a lot of that is something that we think would be a really strong way of enhancing the commercial part of this. But as you can see in this image here, integration of stormwater and these kinds of thoughts can also be part of how this thing is redeveloped over time. So the mix of land uses is important. Here's the high-functioning County Road 42 experience, acknowledging its crucial role in regional and logical transportation network. We'd like to develop strategies to enable better movement along the highway while mitigating its impact on the adjacent districts. So this means there have to be good ways to get on and off, safe ways to get on and off. There have to be other types of spaces that, as you move away from 42, begin to take higher priority. There's a hierarchy of roads. 42 is the biggie. Then there are more roads that are designed more for pedestrian, bicycle use, as well as cars and transportation, other transit. And there's a model in Palm Desert, actually, California, a block off the 111, which is the major highway that connects east and west parts of the Coachella Valley, and it's called El Paseo. You might want to Google that. El Paseo is one block off of the 111, which is similar size, 8 lanes plus, and it's a strolling street, public art, a lot of shopping, restaurants, very successful. So it's an interesting model. It's in the desert. We know it's different, but there are still parallels that I think are important to think about in terms of what happens when you move away from 42. Improving connections to adjacent destinations and regional systems. We know that more choices with mobility are already coming quickly. So ride-hailing and autonomous vehicles are on their way. We know that the Orange Line is going to be here somewhere. Excuse me. And so these linkages that are created through increased modality of movement and by creating physical connections, which you'll see in the more broad district plan in a second, start to create some walkability. We were over this afternoon in the hotel zone, and we were thinking back to Brian, who's on our team, and he described his walk from the hotel to get over to the mall. And we were looking at other ways that you might make a connection like that could be very safe and really quite easily done. Again, everything costs some money, but that connectivity is important to be able to get up to the medical district, to be able to get over to UTC and have those areas be accessible and feed this place. Prepare for change. Interesting article in the Star Trib about the climate change that the federal government has put out there. We know it's here, but the changes in retail are really dramatic as well. Online shopping has been an amazing thing, but the thing that retailers are finding with Gen Xers, for example, is they like to come in and touch the fabric. They might buy it online, but they want to try it and see it and touch it. So there's this sort of reduction in warehousing need for retailers. They need less space, high quality space that people can come into, and they need a robust online presence with a high quality sort of retail bricks and mortar experience. So that's another change that we see through Leland, and Gensler has been talking to us about that as well. So we think that everything from electric cars and how people move is in flux, and probably the next decade will be dramatically different. So we need to be thinking about that as this project moves forward. This community is diverse. I have to admit, when I got started with the project, I was really surprised and pleased to see how diverse and what an opportunity that is to promote inclusion recreationally, in terms of food, in terms of things that are for sale for people shopping. It's, you know, in different countries, shopping is done in pop-up stalls. It's very small, and actually there have been pop-up stalls in the center. So this is not something that's necessarily at opposition with doing some things that invite other cultures to come in. Food trucks and other kinds of ways of dealing with food is yet another way. So we think that reaching out and focusing on community inclusion is critical. The center itself, we, through the conversations that Tom has been having, are well aware of the fact that the Seritage site, the former Sears site, is really ready to make some changes, and they've been doing some interesting design studies of their property to see how that could happen, which would bring in housing, more mixed use, bring in other retail, more food and beverage, and around a small network of streets, regular streets. And so their thinking is in alignment with ours, I would say, in that regard, because it breaks down the scale, it provides comfortable, safe places for people to be, it mixes the uses vertically, and creates, right there on the Seritage site, a completely different experience. And we think that's aligns with what we have been thinking as well. So the center itself is a great place to start because of they have the interest, and again, Tom has been speaking to all of the retailers about their interest, and some are waiting for others to move, but it sounds like Seritage is the low-hanging fruit, and they are ready. Health and wellness is, of course, on everybody's minds these days, and it's a great thing. Places that are designed, like Heart of the City, to allow you to park your car and be in the park, go to a restaurant, go see something at Ames, to be able to move through that district on foot or on bike is a way through physical design to improve pedestrian health. Plus, we think that there's opportunities to bring in more fitness kinds of activities, even a health clinic that might be located within the center. We know that there was that opportunity almost happened previously where Seritage site was approached about becoming a medical facility. So if you think about those kinds of uses, suddenly you're bringing people here for a multitude of reasons, and it impacts everybody in a positive way because people are there. Being creative, one thing we said here is if you look to neighborhoods in the Twin Cities or in suburban communities, there are things going on that are creative things. Can Wonderland is one in St. Paul that has a design by artists of an 18-hole miniature golf course and renovated pinballs. I mean, it's an adult playground. It's swamped. They're having a great time. So that's in the heart of the city, but they're not that heart of the city, the heart of St. Paul.
This image is actually from Can Wonderland.
That's from Can.
Where they're engaging local arts groups to come and use that space as performance space.
Totally family focused. It's marvelous. So these kinds of things are happening in Northeast, Andrew's hometown, where the brew pubs and the artists and so on have made that place a true destination in the Twin Cities. And it's been incremental, but it's happening, and it's really exciting to see. Bringing some of that out here is something that we think could be terribly exciting for the Burnsville district. So this is the broader study area. You can see the core study area in the greens. And beyond it, less definition at this point. We know that the medical district is really important to be connected, and McAndrews and Nicollet do that. McAndrews is a better way right now. But there could even be a pedestrian connection of some sort over the interstate. To the west of the site, there's again potential for large footprint stuff. This what we're trying to look at and achieve here is understanding that this thing takes time. It's going to flex over time, and it can be a framework that can adapt over time. So right now, Costco is really successful. Total Wine, Target, very successful. You know, you don't want to mess with success. But if you can accommodate those larger footprints and then begin to set the stage for a time when Target says, okay, it's been 15 years, we need half the space. Suddenly they can fit on the north side of County Road 42 on one of these large 400 square foot, 400 by 400 blocks. So these are blocks that are about 100 feet larger than downtown Minneapolis, or downtown St. Paul for that matter. There are 300 each, but 400 works really well with the infrastructure that's already in place there. And so you can see that this drawing starts to talk about reaching out to the other districts and trying to provide good access in both directions. We want people coming here, and we want people who are here being able to get elsewhere as easily as possible and as safely as possible.
So just to, I mean, the overall big idea is if you look at that diagram, the green is really creating a center that is pedestrian focused, and especially with that link underneath 42, creating a strong link connecting north and south. The other thing this diagram talks about is how these other blocks can begin to evolve, and as they turn over, are there opportunities to transform those into a more pedestrian-oriented development that works with the property owner's vision, but also begins to build a district. And it also talks about connections. So if you'll see in the red, these are pedestrian bike connections, so connecting over to UTC, connecting the health district across 35W. Maybe it's enhancing the bridge at McAndrews. Maybe it's a new pedestrian bridge that creates a stronger, more direct connection from the healthcare district to the north of 42. Also, if you go look down Nicollet, there's a link that goes through that kind of hospitality district, and is there an opportunity to create a linkage across 35W there that connects those districts in a more direct way to the south side of County Road 42?
And Tom points out the red arrow that goes under 42. That would be this north-south connection that is significantly enhanced with a true bridge. And I realize we're short on time. So, yes.
Sorry.
Yeah,
So in the previous slide, the green dashes though, within the green area, is that still where cars drive or?
Correct.
Okay.
So that's
Yes.
breaking down the scale of those blocks into the 400-foot blocks that Bob was talking about. So those are new streets.
So it breaks down the scale, provides ample sidewalks, bicycle use, and it just quiets it and calms it in a more, I guess, traditional sort of network of streets and blocks.
But still car traffic on there.
There would
Absolutely.
be car traffic.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay.
And this is just a closer view of the districts, North and South District. You can see the North District, essentially 12 blocks. There's a center green in the top 9 blocks in the center there, where management of water, recreational use, even for the neighborhood to the north, could happen. Right where the number 1 sits, I believe that's the number 1, is the, or is it 2, where the connection beneath 42 would occur, which is a direct link between the north and south sides. And it really delivers you to transit.
Okay, Dan?
I like this downtown area you're trying to create here. How many property owners are we going to be dealing with this?
Any problem?
Do you have an idea how many
Yeah.
in that whole area that?
I don't know what the quantity is of the, you're talking about the sort of the area in
If I
green?
look at the future, I come from Minneapolis and I grew up there, so I'm used to the downtown block stuff, which it looks like that's what you're trying to create here. And I'm trying to, as I look at your streets and I wonder how many property owners are going to cross over in the streets where we're dealing with 2 different property owners to actually create a street. And
Oh, I
that sort
see
of
what
thing.
you're saying.
Well, the thing is, you can just, and Jenny, when you look at the target site, there are 3 property owners on that site.
Yep.
So when you look at that, and then when you go north, you've got the coal site. But you've got the Tannerb site, the Burnsville Marketplace. That's really an early opportunity also. Have you had a conversation with Tom?
Yes, we have had a conversation with Tom, and he is supportive
Yep.
of the mixed use.
Yeah.
He, is looking actually at existing opportunities for mixed use, that they're
Yeah.
sort of waiting for that. He really liked the idea of what Roseville is doing.
Yeah.
Roseville's requiring, this is what he told me, we're having a hard time finding it in their code, but he's saying Roseville,
Jenny can find it for you.
yes, that Roseville is requiring residential development with any new commercial development in a vertical way.
Yeah.
So they're requiring vertical mixed use, and he really liked that and thought that that was applicable to
Because
his
then he
site.
can build above what he has now, and also on the Aldrich side. I also like that you've already just etched in the pedestrian, the dashes is a pedestrian connection from,
Yes, I think that's something as properties redevelop, that's part of the conversation with the city is how can we begin to break down the scale of this block and create those connections.
all right.
On the south side around the center, you can see if you look at the east end, the diagonal coming off of the former Sears building. And that is actually planning work that Seritage has done, which we, as I said earlier, it really aligns with how we've been thinking to try to break down the scale, create street scale that is comfortable for people to be walking on. And that's what can happen around the perimeter of the center itself.
Yeah.
This is a long, go ahead.
Well, I think when you're talking about that, you're also got some housing on the Buck Hill side, and you're going to be talking with Maggie, who manages the McCrossan buildings right there on Buck Hill Road.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right,
Vic.
so the Seritage plan does include housing. This plan also includes additional housing kind of at the crest of the slope facing south, which would be fantastic
Yeah.
site for housing. So it kind of is at the south end of the site, and there's a commons area for people who are shopping and people who live there as well. And a winter garden, we're talking about this being a very seasonal place.
Okay,
So,
Dan?
so as I look at this, are you showing that Seritage is actually going to split off from the mall itself and be a kind of a standalone with the street going between
It
the
is a
mall and
concept that
Seritage?
you've spoken to them a little bit about that, yeah?
Yeah, I think, so that's probably one of the bolder parts of this plan is the idea of extending Aldrich through the Burnsville Center site. That's something that we want to have a conversation with CBL about. Obviously, it impacts them significantly, but there's also a lot for them to to win on this site.
Yeah, and Ryan's gonna have to weigh in because there's some easements then that'll have to be taken.
Correct.
Yeah,
As a sort of, what's happening with the other malls is this externalization.
yes.
And there's a desire here, like Lucky's or Lucky Nines, or whatever, externalizes to a patio. And a move like that will suddenly provide externalizing opportunities on both sides of the street, where you can imagine this to become a new pedestrian retail street, and so, and with front doors. And so
Okay.
it's
Yeah.
a way of achieving that.
Question, comment? Yes, please.
You mentioned.
Excuse me, Madam
Yeah.
Mayor. Our communications director asked me to bring to your attention that the commissioners in the back row, we need to play musical chairs so they can come up with their questions and comments. Otherwise, the audience at home and the future viewers can't hear what they're saying.
Thank you. Thank you for reminding us. So you want to come forward and take,
Share a microphone.
yeah, share a microphone. We can get cozy. Yeah, and just give your name, so because you came in late when the introductions were,
Dan Kuplik with
yeah,
the commission.
the Economic Development
Economic Development
Commission. Yeah.
Thank you. So you'd mentioned about mixed-use housing or some sort of, how many units are you approximately? How many units and how
don't know that.
tall? Or do you have a scale?
Don't know that.
Yeah, we don't know what the scale and unit number is. I mean, I think having conversations with Seritage had a number of concepts, so this is just one of them, but they were looking at, I think, 3 to 4 story for apartments. I mean, I think we
Yeah.
would actually like to see more density if it's possible to
Yeah.
fit the parking.
And they
Yeah,
actually called for more in one of their buildings, I
Yeah.
think 5 or 6 stories. That's
Yeah.
the one in the northeast corner there.
Yeah, and Dan, one of the conversations we've had within the council is that if it's mixed use, the scale and the height, we don't have any limitations because we'll work with the developers and see what they would require. But also, when you look at the view shed from 42, looking down, you're going to need some scale because that shopping center on the east side drops down quite a bit. Yes, Jenny?
Madam Mayor, to get to Councilmember Gustafson's question about ownership, the discussions with the anchor tenants at the Burnsville Center have led us to believe that they're willing to modify kind of property lines when redevelopment happens. So they're not stuck to where their lines are, where we have to work around them. When you look at the north development area, those kind of follow the existing
Yeah.
east-west streets, and you do have large property owners
Yeah.
there, like the mayor said. So if and when an individual property is willing to develop or develop on their parking lot and infill, it can be phased in without a major land assembly. That's kind of the goal.
Kind of, I was hoping the answer would be.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the other is that we'll have a shared parking model throughout all of that, just like it is now on the Target site, on the Burnsville Center site, and all of that.
Would have to be.
I think we only had one more slide. And then so it's open for questions now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this slide was just,
Kara, did you have a question?
Yeah, but they can go ahead. He
Oh,
was going to
okay.
summarize.
well, this was just to illustrate sort of what some of the emerging opportunities, which we've already discussed, or things that the council and commissioners can consider as potential kind of first step improvements. So obviously, the Orange Line extension is a great opportunity that's kind of right in front of us. I've talked about J.C. Penney already considering this as a location that they would invest in remodeling. They would also look towards opportunities to introduce mixed use on their site. If you look at Ridgedale, J.C. Penney just carved off about 5 acres off of their site to introduce housing and a new town square for the city of Minnetonka. And that project's moving forward. And then obviously Seritage is one we've talked about. The bridge or underpass on County Road 42. The idea of developing district guidelines is another opportunity, or a district branding, really to kind of raise the level of the whole district, so as you pass through County Road 42 or other areas of this district that you're arriving to someplace special. And then obviously trails, bikeways are another opportunity. And then obviously north of County Road 42, there's opportunities with the Cub site and Burnsville Marketplace as redevelopment.
Okay. Questions for Tom and Bob and Andrew? Comments? Kara?
So, this looks amazing. You know, I'll just put that out there. It does look amazing. And I can definitely see what you're trying to do and making it very cohesive. My question for you is, especially when you're talking about pedestrian traffic and biking traffic, is do people actually walk and ride their bikes to these kinds of things, or do people say they would like to, but don't actually do it? And that's my question, because you know, even in areas where it's very walkable, unless people are kind of walking their dogs or something, or like it's a specific exercise, like I don't see a lot of that behavior. And when I look at studies of what people say they have as a preference versus what people do as an activity, like what they report is what they personally do as an activity, there's a huge discrepancy between what they say and what they do. So, you know, how does that fit in there, and what have you seen in other developments, especially cold climate developments?
Yep, very good question. So if you look at just our region, so if we're talking about introducing mixed use and housing, we're introducing people living within this district. So if you look at Southdale, same thing. They began to introduce mixed use and housing into that district. During the recession, the city of Edina got special legislation that they were able to create a TIF district to invest in the mall site itself. So that was one of the things that they required, was enhanced connections to the mall from all these perimeter streets to create a more pedestrian-oriented environment. They invested in a transit hub, a permanent transit hub location as a part of that TIF district. If you look at Ridgedale, the city of Minnetonka is currently investing in, they invested in design standards, but the loop roads, they're redesigning all of the loop roads around that center to become more pedestrian friendly. They didn't even have sidewalks in that district, and now they'll have sidewalks, and they're already seeing housing being developed on the site. So I think as you begin to introduce people into the site, they're gonna want to be able to walk. I mean, that's the whole reason that they're moving there, to be connected to all of that, so they can just walk without driving.
So you're saying it's more of, it's less that people are coming in from outside of that area to walk and ride within it. It's the people who reside within it who are like, well, why should I get my car out? I can just walk 3 blocks there. Is that?
That's partly, but also, I mean, our conversations with Park Nicollet and UTC and Fairview, they all talked about improved pedestrian connectivity, especially if this evolves into a district like this, that their employees are gonna want to walk to this kind of a destination. I mean, both Fairview and Park Nicollet talked about having housing like they're seeing around Southdale, so that their nurses can live in this district and walk to work.
Well, I
So
can
it's
also.
not only for the people who are living within the district, it's also for the
Well, I can, instead of going out there, the heart of the city, a lot of people, not just the people who live in the heart of the city walk all the way around, but people who come from outside of the heart of the city park, they're recreating in the park, but they're also walking to the Cub area, or they're walking to the restaurants and all of that. So I see a lot of walking activity around the heart of the city. And it is a pedestrian-friendly environment. Okay. Yes, Brady?
Just a quick question. How long of a walk is it from Park Nicollet to, or would we estimate, to this area?
To half a mile, probably.
well, it depends on what the route is, certainly, but I mean, if you look at that line, it's probably a 15-minute walk. So if you think of somebody on their lunch hour, 15 minutes there. I mean, like we talked to Frontier Communications, who's on the south side of Burnsville Center, and they said the majority of their employees have lunch at Costco. And they talked about pedestrian connectivity of their employees walking to Costco and walking back.
Okay.
I don't know, that didn't answer your question on
Well,
time, but.
as I was looking at it, I just thought getting over to Fairview, it might start getting to be a little bit of a stretch to connect that whole area from a walking standpoint. Just again,
The
lunch
food
hour.
truck in the middle.
There you go. Fuel
Yeah.
up.
But the food truck
I'm just teasing.
wouldn't have all this
Yeah.
Infrastructure investment in it either. So,
Okay, Kara?
And so you brought up something good that I would like to know. So in our heart of our city, what is the pedestrian traffic rate? Do we know?
I don't know, no.
I don't know what the rate is, but I do see a lot of people walking, and I see people who don't live in the buildings around there, but I see them with their cub bags walking up on Nicollet. So I'm thinking that they're going to the residents, the single-family dwellings on the south side of the Parkway.
No, and I get
Yeah.
that, but I would rather have data to make decisions.
Yeah. We could probably get that,
Because
Jenny.
that would be extremely helpful, because that helps us in our priorities.
Yep.
You know, like what would become a priority? What do you do when?
Yeah,
That would be extremely useful for that.
Absolutely.
yeah. Dan?
I'll say that I work in the heart of the city, so I see a lot of people running around down there. I'll also say that the heart of the city is not complete yet. We have a lot of
Right.
buildings that are about to go down there, and as those occur, I think we're gonna see a lot more people walking around. We got stopped in 2008, as we all know, because of the recession and everything, and we're restarting that now, and we're getting activity down there, and as we build, hopefully the 310 units we're gonna build and others are on their way, that's gonna add pedestrians to that area, and the mayor's right. I mean, they walk to the restaurants and over to the Cub store, the Red Lion, and all those places.
No, and
And-
I do not dispute that.
We need,
I
what we
just
need is
want the data.
density of population. is what
So,
we
Yeah.
need.
and I think that could help us, because that might be a comparable thing for us to look at, you know, pedestrian rates in the heart of the city, and then that, I think that would be comparable, right, to
Okay.
what we would be trying to do here?
Jenny?
Madam Mayor, members of the council, we'll see what we can come up with for Heart of the City, and maybe some before or after of similar areas like this Lakewood, Colorado.
thank
Because
you.
this dynamic, I think, is going to be different than Heart of the City because of what
Yeah.
what is already there and
Yeah.
all the traffic already going through there right now. So it's a little bit different, but we'll see what information
Yeah.
we can come up with to get
Thank
you.
very much.
And the
Thank you.
heart of the city, it has the Ames Center as a destination, and then with all of the dance competitions from February to June, the end of June, there's a lot of traffic, pedestrian traffic, once the people are all there, and they're there till 12 a.m. because of the way the competitions run. So they're walking all over to get food. Yeah, Steve?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I guess I'm really liking what I'm seeing here, and just as an observation, I'm just struggling with the vertical component, the grade component to this. It looks really good in 2D, but I'm just having a hard time seeing how some of this stuff works in 3D with the slopes that are out there. So I didn't really need answers for it, I just wanted
Yeah.
to point it out.
Yeah,
That's
well,
where Andrew
the
comes in.
slope works also with the
We actually
grade
have
of the
the
heart of the city. I
topography
mean,
for
we
this
have,
site, and Andrew is building a three-dimensional model of this entire site. So next time we meet with you, we'll be able to
Yeah.
share that.
Also some key sections through the site, so you can see how parking is handled and what can sit on top of parking and address 42.
Yeah,
Right.
good question.
you know, those were some of the questions that were asked when we were designing and building the heart of the city because of the grade change.
Absolutely.
It just works just fine. They do it in
Right.
San Francisco and Duluth.
Oh, yeah.
And what
Absolutely.
makes us think that it can't happen here in Burnsville?
Right, right.
It's a good question, though.
Yeah. Yes, please.
I'm just, sorry. I'm just curious on the tunnel. How wide of a tunnel are you looking at? If you're to tunnel through?
Thinking about it really
Bridge.
as a bridge, not a tunnel,
Sorry, bridge.
with a very different sort of character. So it would be, it's open. Whatever we can manage, we would like. But the space, I mean, there's today there's a right in and right out where the tunnel is proposed to get in on both sides. We'd pull those right in, right outs to about that block width, 400 feet apart. And this would grade down to this connection, and the bridge could be 150 feet long, or it could be 200. And underneath, it would be open and airy, and we've even discussed the potential of...
And safe.
And safe, well-lit, well-used. And we've discussed the possibility of opening the east and westbound lanes to bring light down through the center.
So like the overpass at Lake and where the light rail goes over, it's a much larger opening than just
Yes.
a tunnel.
Yeah, yeah. So we don't want it to feel like a dark, dank, there are some really good precedents, and we will bring you some more of those to look at, but there's some good precedents for doing this.
Yeah, if you ever travel near Southdale on York, just south of
Yeah.
Southdale Center, there is a bridge like this. That's probably, it's not as long as what we're talking about, but it's probably 100 feet wide, and it has space in the medians that let light down into that, so it's not a dark tunnel the whole way, that it lets natural light in, so.
Chris, you had a question and comment?
Little follow-up on that. The two roads that seem to come down, would that be underneath this tunnel or this bridge?
No.
No, okay,
The two roads that come off 42 as they do today,
okay.
a right in and right out, and they would
the
bring you into
intersection.
the sites at either way and into parking. So the notion being that you get people out of the car, into the parking, and people use their feet. It's basically what they did in downtown Minneapolis.
Yeah.
So it's that concept of
Okay.
making parking convenient, accessible, but not bringing everybody down onto the pedestrian streets.
Dan Kuplik?
Yeah, do you have green space in here also?
Oh,
Is there
yes,
a
yeah.
park or something?
I mean, up in the north end, there's, in that sort of 9-block core up in the north edge here, let's see if I can, right there.
The housing's thinking of being in the south part, isn't it? The
This-
Sears idea?
This here would be a square block, 400 feet on the side of open space, not unlike Heart of the City in terms of recreational management of stormwater, appealing to people, we would hope, who live north of McAndrews, so that it becomes, and the people who would live around it, because this would be a more residential mixed-use area, but still accommodating retail. So there's one there, there's the South Commons, which is a major open space south of Penny's, or part of Penny's would be that, and it's serving the housing and the retail as well. And then, of course, we're trying to make the streets green, and which means that they're doing a job in terms of stormwater. They have a canopy of trees, they have gracious sidewalks, a boulevard, and so on. So it's more of a traditional street as opposed to just surface parking, okay? And surface parking, as I was mentioned, is actually handled close to 42, kind of tucked into the hill, but retail can sit actually on top of it so that it's at street level for 42, giving it that real visibility that has a lot of value. So there are details, obviously, that were worked out, but that's where it sits.
Okay, is there anything else that you want us to know about this update? I'm just managing our time.
Well, I think one of the things that we're gonna come to you at the next meeting is just understanding what the city's role in redevelopment is. I mean, if you look at Ridgedale and Southdale, that's really been the retailers
Yeah.
getting efficiency
Yeah.
with their parking, creating outlots.
Yeah.
But if you're able, if we want to realize a vision like this, where we're condensing those parking lots even more into parking ramps, then it becomes a real strong public-private partnership about creating this unique district. So those are the things that we want to talk to you about and consider, and kind of understanding what other communities are doing as far as participation.
Yeah, because I've talked to the mayor of Wayzata too, to what they did in Wayzata in creating, because that's beautiful.
Very well.
Yeah.
I've been out
Yeah,
there.
and then in Minnetonka, so,
Yep,
okay.
good.
Any other questions, comments before I? Well, Tom, Bob, and Andrew, thank you so much. We'll see you again next month.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay.
Work in Revit or something else.
Ryan,
Okay, thanks.
So,
I usually work in sketches.
so as we transition and staff, Dana, you're on deck? Yeah, and thank you very much, commissioners, for coming and being here. We really appreciate everything. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. All right, the next item on our agenda is the draft legislative agenda. And Dana?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. This evening, we're going to talk through our annual discussion on the draft legislative agenda. You're going to see this come before you a couple more times with adoption in November, and then we will invite our legislators to come join us for a discussion in January this year with the election year. In the past, you've reviewed the entire document, and I don't have a PowerPoint presentation this evening. I thought we would just go through. The packets are in the the document was in your packets this evening. So what I'll do is focus on things that have changed from last year and provide a little bit more detail behind those changes. And then if there are any questions on any of the position statements, we can do that. There are 3 different types of positions with the legislative agenda. This has been that way for several years now. We have legislative priorities, we have supporting positions, and we also have monitoring positions. Our priority positions are positions where staff and council members would take an active role. Essentially, we're leading the charge on those activities. And the supporting positions, adoption of those positions would allow staff to testify or write or sign on to letters of support as things come up through the legislative session. Process. And then the monitoring positions are just that, monitoring. We keep an eye on things, and if they come up, we may or may not ask council to authorize staff to take action, whether it be a letter of support or testimony in front of the legislature. With that in mind, I'll just dive into our policies, and we'll go section by section, and I can pause after each section for if council's open to that for feedback.
And we're just highlighting what's new and what has changed because we've gone through the whole thing.
Yep.
Year
Several
after year.
years,
Yeah.
and the format has been the same.
Yeah.
So we'll
Yeah.
just focus,
No.
we'll move through pretty quickly here this
you
evening.
like that, Bill.
So legislative priorities, we have 2 this year that we're proposing. And number 1 would be, it continues to be our priority, which is closure of the freeway landfill. And we did make some minor modifications that just kind of cleans up that language. And these updates reflect essentially where we're at in the process. Now, October 15th, we're going to have a work session where there may be new information provided, and you may want to consider special legislation. And if we were to move as it relates to host fees and some of these issues, so if we have opportunities to make modifications after that presentation, and if council directs us to do that, and we could wrap that into this position. Okay. But until that discussion happens, this is the staff's proposal. So minor modifications there. The other one is creating and implementing local partnerships, and Chief Jungman's really done a lot of heavy lifting on this. He's been out front in this issue, working very proactively with legislators on this issue, as well as through the Chiefs Association. And really, the only change that we see here is a minor changing this from fire taxing district to fire protection district, and we feel that that will help in our legislative pursuit of this change. And then last year we had law enforcement portable recording systems data that worked its way through the legislature, and Chief Giesecke was very involved and active in getting this legislative passed in a way that's open and transparent, and we've been working with people to report that data. So we've moved that out into a supporting position. So we're just focused on those two priorities at this time. And I'll pause there for any feedback or questions.
Any feedback, questions? I think it's on point.
Excellent.
Okay.
Moving on to supporting systems. Before we jump into this, a lot of the modifications in this area have to do with local control, and we're not suggesting that we eliminate those altogether. What we've done, and I'll get to that in a minute, but we've created a broader position where all these things could, right of way, levy limits, all those things could fall under one broader position that would be helpful for us to respond rather than and clean up our positions so we don't have so many. So the first position, local land use controls, and there aren't any changes from last year, but local control, as you can see, it's a larger or longer position, but as I mentioned, that really incorporates some of the changes as it relates to making sure that we have greater access to other and tax revenue sources, that we support current laws for municipal franchise fee authority, and that we have greater authority and discretion as local officials to decide what is allowed in our rights of way and those fees charged. These are all things that have been looked at the state, the FCC, even at the federal level has recently made a decision that would preempt or limit local control in these areas. So this continues to be something that we would like to monitor if council would go in that direction. And it talks about opposition to legislation that would erode those fundamental principles of local control in cities and speaks to some of those examples. So this is, again, a combination of previous positions rolled into one.
Okay. Yeah, Bill?
I absolutely love that idea. Makes it simple, states our, my position, covers it all. Perfect.
Right.
Yeah, and I like that it's separated out. Here's what we support, here's what we oppose. Makes it clear for everybody.
Thank you, and we do provide some of those examples from the previous positions. So moving on, you see that we moved that law enforcement portable recording systems data to supporting from the priority. There were no changes to the metropolitan governance position, but I wanted to mention that there were a number of proposals. This continues to be looked at, and this may be something that we may be coming to you in the future for a change based on discussions that we have with our friends at the county as well as other metro city. And this continues to be a little bit different than the metro cities policy, which supported staggered terms. But for this year, we're not proposing any changes.
Yeah. I think it makes sense right now as we just move through.
The next change has to do, if we go down to number 7, preservation of the community, host community economic development grant program. These were minor changes here. Again, we're just trying to clean up the language so there's, we just get right to the point of what we support or what we oppose, and that's exactly what this is doing. It seems like everybody wants to have a little piece of that host fee money, so we do want to continue to monitor or to support this, to preserve this for the city.
And I'm glad that we're keeping an eye on that because every legislative session, somebody is always trying to take that money away, and we're the ones who are the host garbage.
The next change that we see is number 10, data retention and classification. What we've done here is there continues to be a number of proposals that really broaden what cities have to maintain in terms of record to the point of it's everything, whether it has business or financial or historical value, and that becomes challenging, both from a file storage standpoint and a cost standpoint, becomes very financially burdensome for cities to do that. So, so we did add not just storage of files, but storage of data. We wanted to make sure that it was clear that this includes electronic as well as paper copies. And the other addition that we made is the city also supports critical incident stress debriefing data as classification as personal private data. So this is something we take critical debriefing very seriously in the city. It's something that our police and fire personnel are that take very seriously, and so we just are asking for recognition that that particular data be classified as private. The next change, daycare facilities and licensing got moved to monitoring. So no changes to the actual language, just a moving down to the monitoring position. The levy limits, that speaks to how it got rolled into the broader local control. And then minor changes to the transportation position, which is position number 11. We've added some changes under the transit section, so it's a subsection of that, to streamline that language and really emphasize that with investment in the orange line, that it's important to have the funding and development to enhance this system. So we really call that out. And then we also call out that there are no current plans to expand the light rail trains to the city, so having that funding for the bus rapid transit is important for the city. Number 12, cable services, service providers, and cable franchising. The cable franchising is an addition to the title in this position, and we've also made some changes as it relates to clarification. The city really focusing on local control. Again, this is really driven largely by what's happening at the state and the federal level with the FCC wireless application and cable franchise. So that the city would have the ability to preserve its control of the right-of-way, provide local programming, and ensure certain standards for cable television. We're not able to regulate rates, so to the extent we can regulate other standards such as customer service, this is something that we would like to preserve. And that we also oppose state and federal changes to the cable franchising laws that would negatively impact the city and its residents. And this really speaks to the importance of those PEG. The public educational and governmental programming that we offer. Number 13, very minor change, just adding funding for local services to clarify what it is in that position that we're stating. And again, number 14, a very minor change. This is alignment of responsibilities to agencies with expertise. Anytime we have an opportunity to add clarifying language or provide examples, we were looking to do that, and that's what we've done here. Examples include fire code adoption process and water appropriations. Okay. There were no changes then in positions 15, 16, or 17. And page 5, page 6, I'm missing a page here. Here we go. The next change, fiscal disparities, a very minor change. Again, we just are streamlining that language, cleaning up, and just getting right to the point of what we're trying to convey. Local government aid. Right now, we've left this in here as a position, but this may be a position that, should the council want to, this could easily be wrapped into that broader position of local control. So we've just made a modification that the city opposes LGA appropriation freezes and reductions to the LGA to balance the state budget deficit, or to influence activities and policy decisions at the local level. This is something that was just looked at by, I believe, MLC in this last year. So we just wanted to call some attention to those specific things that they were looking at. Changes to position 20, which is eminent domain. We had a number of bullet points, and really the issue here, we wanted to call attention to a more appropriate balance of attorney fees that are awarded with the outcome of the proceeding. So it just cleans up that language and focuses on what the issue is. 21 is effective delivery of local government services. And we just expanded our opposition. Our includes opposition to any changes that would reduce its ability to manage its workforce in a manner that balances available resources and effective provision of services. An example here is PELRA. The PELRA position has been a long-standing position, and it has been in our monitoring area. And if you got through the entire agenda, but for the public's sake, the PELRA position, we're recommending that gets rolled into the supporting system, this particular supporting position, to clean that up, and then it would eliminate that specific PELRA position, but still maintain what that position was trying to convey. Hopefully that makes sense. And then the final one in supporting is effective administration of local, state, and federal elections. And all we did here is clean this up and simply state the city supports legislation that promotes open, efficient, secure, and cost-effective administration of local, state, and federal elections.
Okay.
Any questions,
Okay.
comments on supporting positions?
Kara?
On the massage licensing, for next year, I would like to revisit that because I would like to hear from, and we do have some experts in Minnesota on occupational licensing and the effects or lack of effect on public safety. So I would like that looked closer to, because again, I would really like to be more data and study driven in our decision making and less about a feel a certain way. So I would really like that looked at.
Okay. And we can get some of that data from police? And
This
from
was
probably from other municipalities also, so have a much
Yeah, I
broader
know,
view of what's going on.
There's actually a professor at the Carlson School of Business who is considered an expert throughout the country on occupational licensing.
Okay. That would
Thank
be
you for
good.
that feedback. Yep, we can certainly do that. And also, Chief Giesecke was very engaged in this issue the
Yes.
last couple of years. But it didn't appear from a legislative standpoint that there was any activity happening around this. And so we've moved that suggested that we move that to monitoring. But yes, we can certainly bring back that information.
Okay.
Thank
So
you, I'd
that's more-
appreciate that.
okay. More supportive. Okay, any other questions, comments on the supporting? If not, will you move to the monitoring position statements?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Monitoring or tracking position statements, again, very minor changes. State property taxes, no changes there. And the data retention and classification, we moved that to a supporting position. The daycare licensing, number 2, that moved from supporting to monitoring, but no changes were proposed to the language. And number 4, you can see that crossed out under the PELRA. That was the one that I just talked about, being moved into the supporting position of effective delivery of local government services, number 21 in supporting. Minor clarification on number 5, disposable of flushable products. We've added some clarification language around concern with sanitary wipe products packaging containing advertising that is acceptable to be flushed. Those wipes, however, do damage the city's and the region's sanitary sewer infrastructure and can hamper their operations. We thought that was important to state. That is an issue that's very much a hot topic and being discussed in those.
I think, Ryan, a couple of years ago, didn't we experience some of that with some of this flushable that's not biodegradable?
Basically, all
of
the
yeah.
communities have that.
But it-
And when it gets to the
it
plants,
clogs
it's
our-
really a big deal.
Yeah.
If it gets into lift stations, it's really difficult to manage.
Yeah, and people don't, we have so many lift stations because
Yeah.
we're a hilly community and it gets stuck.
Correct.
Yeah, thank you. Dan?
Was it that they're allowed to put flushable on the packaging when it doesn't break down like
Yeah.
toilet paper?
Yeah, I mean, they're saying that they are gonna break down, but they just don't, is the problem.
Yeah.
Is that
There's
covered?
not a lot of regulations
Yeah, I was gonna
around
say,
that.
what regulation from the federal government even
Yeah.
Yeah.
is
That's part of
monitoring that or managing that? Really nothing.
Exactly.
But in actuality, we experience what that does to our lift stations.
Sure.
Very much.
Okay.
Creates a lot of damage, and the products are increasing in popularity, which really adds a layer of complexity to the
Yeah,
issue and draws it more attention to it. And then number 7, aggregate mining fee. We, with all the things that we're talking about with expansion, with KMA, and we wanted to not we didn't want to limit. We wanted to make sure that when we're having those discussions, we're having flexibility in how we look at where potential revenues could go. And so we're just recommending that we strike that the proceeds should be deposited in the general fund. We wanted to leave that open for future discussion. And this may be one of those positions that moves into either a priority or a supporting, or gets eliminated and integrated with a different position as an outcome of the October 15th work session.
Okay. Any comments on the monitoring side? Very good.
Thank you
Nicely
for your
done.
feedback.
Yeah, very well done. Okay. Then we will now move on to edible plants in public spaces. Garrett.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. At the January all-day council work session, council expressed some interest in learning more about what's going on with edible plants and whatnot. So this evening, I'm going to kind of take you through a quick presentation on that. Over the last decade, there has been a growth in interest to intentionally have fruits and vegetables in public spaces. Whether it's here in Burnsville, in nearby communities, nationwide, or around the world, fruits and vegetables are intentionally growing in parks through a variety of different ways. And so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about community gardens. We have a unique edible playground I'll share with you. And then there's intentional planting of fruit trees, bushes, and plants. And then there's a more elaborate process, which is the creation of a food forest that I'll share with you about. So in Burnsville, we have 2 community gardens. A community garden is essentially a public space that's turned into some garden plots, and then we allow the public, in most cases, they come in, they will rent out the garden plot, and then they'll use that space to grow their own fruits and vegetables for their own personal consumption. As mentioned, in Neal Park, we put in our first community garden. There are 39 garden plots there. And over the last 3 years, we've rented out 92% of those spaces. In 2011, we had a partnership with a group, Woodhill Urban Agriculture. And with that particular garden plot in Woke Park, the partnership involved the city building it, and we did an annual till of that space. And then we did some of the reservations of the plots, but they did some programming out of there and had some unique things going on. We did that partnership. The community garden still exists today, but in 2018, the city ended up now kind of managing it the same way that we manage Neal Park and whatnot.
Because Woodhill opted out.
That is correct. Yep. They had some changes and had in conversations
personnel.
with them, they preferred that we just take over from there. As I was looking into this and talking to fellow Park and Rec directors, I have a good friend in Eden Prairie, and he shared with me a little bit about a unique situation in their community. An anonymous donor reached out to the Park and Rec department. They had a mission to educate youth about growing and eating healthy food and creating sustainable sources. And so they donated the money to the city to construct the facility you see there in the picture. And then what happens is it's kind of similar to our Neal Park in that there's an elementary school nearby, and yet there's also park building and playground programs take place. So their school students take care of the garden during the school year, and then during the summer, the participants in the summer playground program take care of it. So kind of a unique situation that was kind of the dream of one of their residents in their community.
And in Burnsville, the high school has their own garden.
Correct.
And it's right there as you get into the high school, and you'll see the garden.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep. Expanding out, and again, through the research process, I came across 3 different communities that have kind of done some intentional plantings of trees and bushes and whatnot in their parks. And in all these cases, they were new projects. So in Cottage Grove, their goal was to create kind of a natural park. So their playground structures and their trails are all very natural looking and kind of create a nature play type environment. And in that park itself, they planted some fruit trees along the trail that run through the park, and then they have a dedicated area where they have onions and raspberries and different things that the city staff maintain and take care of, but it is open to the community just to come in and pick and use as they when they're in the park. In Eden Prairie, they had 20 fruit trees donated to their community, and so the Parks and Natural Resources Commission, the City Council, and members of PROP, which is people reaching out to people in their community, they all got together one afternoon and planted the 20 trees in 2016. They're still young to start producing fruit at this time, but once they do start producing fruit, the plan is that a group will come in there and harvest the fruit and then give it all over to PROP at that point so that they can distribute it through the community. And that was at a park next to their senior center. And then Lakeville, we all know that Lakeville is a growing community, and as their housing developments go up, they're putting in new parks. And so most recently this year, as part of the landscaping of one of their new parks, they did dedicate an area to some strawberry bushes that went into the park. More elaborate is the concept of a food forest. Food forests are basically modeled off of creating a sustainable, self-sufficient agricultural production area. Most of the food forests, as you can kind of see in the graphic here, they incorporate a layering type system. So they'll have root crops and some ground cover, and then vines and herbs next to them, and then shrubs that produce fruits, and then the actual larger trees that produce fruit. So it's a pretty elaborate system and process, and much more goes into it than just establishing a small area for raspberries or strawberries and whatnot. Again, research will kind of indicate there's about 60 of these types of facilities around the world. They've all used a very similar process where there's some type of passionate group that serves as the volunteer organizing group. They kind of do the recruiting and the fundraising. If necessary, they put a design team together, a landscape architect, whatever, take care of the fundraising, and then they're kind of guaranteeing the long-term maintenance and care of the location. The city's role in all of these situations is they have provided the land and whatnot for those things to happen. So once those things get established and they're up and running, again, they are essentially an open space in public areas where people who are in the park are welcome to come in and pick the different fruits and vegetables for their own consumption. As far as these, there's a lot of benefits to the food forests, but it was kind of nice in the research process. They do all kind of share about, these are not easy things. They're time consuming. There's a lot of financial obligation for the long-term maintenance of it. And so, yes, they do provide a lot of social, economic, health, environmental benefits to the community, but there's also some challenges that may potentially go along with them. So just kind of talked about it takes time for these things to establish. So if your volunteer group loses steam along the way, you may end up having a project start but not finish. There is the ongoing funding and maintenance that's required to maintain these types of facilities. And so again, as I mentioned, you need a strong volunteer group willing to be doing the work, to do the ongoing fundraising and maintenance and whatnot. And then, of course, there were a couple instances where people in the area did complain about wildlife or pests that would come in if it's not maintained properly. And that often, if the volunteer group kind of falls off, that's the dangers associated with that. So In closing, I'll just share that this was really for informational purposes only from the all-day work session. We currently do not have any plans to intentionally put fruit trees or bushes in our parks at this time. However, again, as talking to our local park and rec departments, you know, they didn't intentionally go into a park and make changes. It was, they thought about how do they incorporate that in projects if the opportunity presents itself. So I would say our position at this point would really be that if there's a chance to try something and it fits within the project, we'll consider it. Or if we were to have a donor come forward and would want to talk more about how do we make something happen, that we would absolutely want to be at the table and listen to what they have interest, what they're interested in doing. But we don't have anything planned for the upcoming year, next few years. So, and I will take any questions.
Comments? No, very, very nice. And you know, I'm familiar with our community gardens because those are, and that took off. And then you have the churches who have put up their own, the YMCA in collaboration with Arbor and Fairview have that big garden on the south side parking lot of the Y. So it's a huge garden plot. I like what we have at Woke, but we had a partner, but then when that partner went away, I think the church also benefited because the church helped us to irrigate.
Correct.
That, because we didn't have irrigation in Woke Park. But the church, we pulled the water from the church. And so the one thing that we've done there is that the church also benefits because people who grow and have excess, all of that goes there because when I'm volunteering on a Saturday, they've got a lot of produce that comes as excess. And the other nice thing on the Neal Park side, that group from the very beginning used to have a harvest dinner. Everybody who was planting, then what they do is they have food that's made from what they harvested. And it was a nice social event, and it was great.
Yep.
And I was wondering, I'm going to find out, because they used to have that, and I used to get invited. And now the last 2 years, I'm thinking they don't do that dinner anymore. But it was very good, yeah. But I like our gardens. But there's churches with gardens. The high school has a garden, a lot of gardens, community gardens.
Yep.
Yeah, very nice.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you. The next item is the single-family permit rebate. And Mr. Pastor, you're on deck.
I'm on deck.
Yes.
On the top slideshow, go over to the right.
Oh, got it. Don't have my glasses on. There you go, Chris.
Now, I know Bill gave you a challenge, but, you know.
Yeah, we'll see about that. Madam Mayor and Council, talking about the single-family permit rebate program. This is established in 2012. And it was to encourage homeowners to invest into their properties and improve the view of the city and providing this rebate program is for plan reviews and building permits for a full refund, a return.
Mm-hmm.
So what we do is we make sure that they pull the permit and do the work, and then we give them a refund if they're eligible, if they've added to the square footage of their house, added on to the top. It isn't for things like decks, but it is for additions. And
It's to improve the market value of the property.
Yeah, to improve the market value. Even removing a home and building a new home.
Kara?
Every 3 years, this is reviewed.
Chris, Kara?
Yeah.
So does it include things such as replacing siding or other things like that that does improve the marketability of the home?
It
But
does-
does not change the square footage?
No, it does not, and it does not include siding, windows, even a bump out of cantilever joist for a bay window, decks, patios that aren't covered, but anything that would be covered, the last time, 3 years ago, it was changed from a covered deck. That was not included in the first initial, and that's now included a screened-in porch area and enclosed so four and 3-season porch are both covered under that.
Okay. Dan K?
Dan G had his hand up.
Okay, Dan G?
Is there an income requirement on this, a minimum income or?
There is no
Maximum
income, no minimum or
No.
maximum
No.
income.
Dan K?
Well, I guess I think back in the discussions we had that led up to this was about what little we could offer, but an incentive for someone to improve their property. And, you know, every 4 years when we go out and door knock, we start to see a lot of properties up close and personal. And there are some siding, trim issues, roofing issues that are, I think, was the spirit behind this program. From my perspective, it wasn't just about expanding the footprint, which is great, but I would like to see it offered to people, and Councilmember Schultz, I don't know if this was the gist of your question, but there are homes that we would love to offer an incentive to, if it's just this, to do those improvements, because the exterior of the house looks really rough, and it's sort of dragging down the rest of the street, and you've got, you know, 3 or 4 houses that are really nicely maintained, and one that looks like a rental, and in some cases, and I have some information to give to Jenny, is a rental according to the neighbors, and it's in atrocious shape. And if I were next door to them, I'd be a little upset. And so we need to do some investigating from our property division, but why not go to that landlord, owner of that rental home, and say, you know, fix up the house, and here's a little rebate on your fees to help, you know, incent you to do it. Because the end result is improve the house and raise the quality of the look. And I thought that's what this program was about. Not about, hey, I'm going to add on, right, square footage and value per se, because the value of these permits isn't huge, right? I mean, it's not like, okay, I'm going to put 20 grand into my house. You're going to save me $500. Wow, okay, thank you. You know, that's great. But if I'm going to replace the siding on my house and it's going to cost me $8 grand and it makes a dramatic change to my house, appearance-wise, I'll take all the incentive I can get if that's what moves
We
somebody
do
to
have
do it.
another rebate program that's $25 off the permit fee for something like the windows and siding. If you come to one of our classes that we put on, have another one Thursday.
Okay, speak a little louder, a little bit more volume.
Okay. Just for, we do have some seminars that we give, or homeowner workshops that we give, and we give a $25 gift card for those attendees. We put it on their PID into the Track It system, our permit Track It system, and then when they come in, they can receive that $25 reduction in fee.
Okay. Bill?
Do you know at what level you have to get a permit? Like, say you decide to change 10 feet by 20 feet of your siding as a repair versus replace all of your siding. What is there?
What is the permit fee?
Well,
what's the?
What
do you have
triggers
to-
the permit?
Yeah, does that trigger the permit?
So the law says any alteration, demolition, or repair requires a permit. However, there are some exceptions. So it starts at it's required, and then there's exceptions. And something like that, we have a 1 square, which is 100 square feet of area that we allow that repair to happen before they would be required to have a permit.
Okay,
And that's consistent with the rest of the Twin City metro area.
okay. Dan G?
I was around when we started this program, and I agree with Dan, although I'm not as concerned about the landlord as I am some of our seniors and people that have of less means. to be able to do some repairs without
And I think that was the
having.
intent.
I think it was, and I don't think this meets the intent of what we were talking about, and I think we should bring it back to discuss more how we can maybe expand that.
Yeah.
We are spending a lot of money on commercial property improvement right now in the city. We're from our studying County Road 42 and all these different things. We need to pay some attention to our neighborhoods as well, and how can we improve those neighborhoods? And so I think that's worth a meeting that we, as a council, really need to discuss.
Yeah, we can bring it back to a work session. Jenny?
Madam Mayor, members of the council, and that's what I was going to say, and we'll bring you some numbers because
Yeah.
we process a lot of windows and siding. We can kind of give you some parameters. And in some of these cases, I'm guessing we may want to talk about waiving a fee, a permit fee, instead of issuing a rebate
Yes.
because
Yeah.
it takes more staff
Yeah.
time to collect the fee and issue a rebate than
Yeah,
it is if we
it's
just
too
charge
much.
them.
I
They
think,
still need a permit, but
Gets
not
the same.
collect the fees.
so I think
And
once
outcome.
we take a look and say, what are the permissible
Correct.
activities?
We'll bring you
Then-
some numbers,
yeah.
and these all impact the budget, and you're having discussions on budget.
That's right.
And so these numbers, if you want to flip to the next slide,
Yeah,
are very
because-
nominal numbers, because we don't have that many, but we have
Yeah, because in
hundreds
2018, we only have two
so far.
so far.
So the
But if we
numbers,
waive fees for a whole bunch,
the numbers I would
Might-
expect would be
yeah.
significantly higher than this. And there's still work to be done, an inspection and a closeout of that permit. So there's still an expense for the city if we start waiving fees. So just a word of caution, we'll bring you the information, you can decide
But I
what
think
direction
this
you
is-
want to give.
But I would
and-
say there's also a benefit to the city if these properties improve, because it improves everybody's.
I don't
property
disagree
values.
with you, but
Yeah.
there are impacts that you just want to make sure that you talk about.
No,
Yeah.
I hear you.
Yeah, and I think that's a good idea. Bring it back to a next council meeting, and then we can take a look at what is the cost impact, and then what is that return? Because if you can just randomly pull those houses, because right now we spent 30,000 in 2014 and 15, right, in rebates?
Those are result of when you started the program, it was a lag in time for those projects to finish.
Yeah.
And I think that's where that number is so high on that year. Overall average is about 11,000 per year.
So, and then, of course, then we'll take a look and say, you can pull the PID number of that house and see what was the assessed value and what is the assessed value now after all of that. And there's a 2-year lag on the appraisals. So I think that's all good information for us to make those kinds of decisions. And especially, I get it, Jenny, we're in budgets, and when it's going to have a cost effect on, and also the human capital effect on all of that, we need to know that. Dan
Just
Keeley.
to follow up, since this ends in 2018, do we ultimately have to renew this?
Yeah.
Before we have the discussion next year of a potential replacement program? Or
Madam Mayor-
because
Yeah.
we're talking budget, we have to have the replacement program done by the end of this year, or it's going to be a 2020
Yeah.
type of thing?
Madam Mayor, members
yes.
of the council, this is in the 2019 budget.
Yeah. Yeah.
Going forward, so those numbers are accounted for, probably 15,000 that we did this
Yeah.
year,
Probably
probably rolled
15,
over. So if we want to continue this program, if you want to give us some direction, then we can get
And
that
then we
done
can
by the
take a
end of
look
the year.
for 2020.
Yeah, I'm
on
not sure
what all of-
exactly when we can bring you this information back.
Yeah,
That's late.
okay.
Wait.
Dan G.
We can continue this program with the amended budget, as I think is what you're talking about, and modify that next year as we go through it, correct?
That's correct. I mean, we can do whatever you want, right? So I'm just telling you, if we
Yeah.
extend this, it's accounted for in 2019 budget. If we want to change something in February or March that has budget impacts, that may require a budget amendment and future, consideration on an implementation of when you want to roll something out.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I'm going to go to Bill and then back to you.
Under those circumstances, I'm for continuing to go with it.
Okay, Dan?
Well, I'd hate to wait till 2020 to amend it. I guess we can't make a decision without some numbers that,
Yeah.
like, what are the total number of permits issued for siding
Sidings.
and roofing, windows? That's more of a weatherproofing thing. I think visually, it's really the siding and the roofing and trim. painting, whatever. So driveways, replacing a.
No permits, we don't have any records.
Oh,
of
that's
that
right,
one.
that's not.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
whatever those permit numbers are, I guess we need to know what it is to
And we
consider a
need some good
modification for
data
2019.
to make good decisions, so we need the data before we make those
I
changes,
don't know
Bill.
if there's time to do it.
And we're in a serious budget crunch right now.
Yeah.
For those of us that have attended the pre-budget meetings, it's a serious
Yeah.
matter. So I wouldn't think that we have any extra money at this time
Yeah.
to look at this issue right now before the,
Yeah.
going into next year.
Okay, Dana?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council, just to kind of piggyback on Councilmember Coughlin's comments. If you were to do an amendment, as Ms. Faulkner suggested, in 2019, that would mean the budget that we're presenting, we will be presenting, there will have to be reductions, cuts to programs or services already accounted for in that budget in order to accommodate any additional funding for these programs.
Yeah, and this is the reason why we need good data, good information to make good decisions. And I know if we wait, it's just having the good information to make those decisions. Okay, Dan Kay?
Well, and I get it. I know exactly where Councilmember Coughlin's coming from after sitting through the $500,000 surprise and the impacts on a budget this year. It's a tough year, and I don't even know what the number would be, if it's really, really big, or if it's another, because we're way under budget last year, and we're gonna end this year way under budget. We're not even rebating anywhere near what we thought we would, but, so I don't know what that, for what we're trending, and what, if we open up to other things, what impact that has. So
Yeah.
maybe we just have to resolve to address it in 2019 for 2020, because
Yeah.
2019 already is a really bad year
Yeah.
from a budget
And
standpoint.
I think that gives staff time to take a look at that. So what are the things that we would just not charge a fee for, a permit fee for? If it's siding, it's roofing, what are the things that they pull permits for?
A follow-up. 2014 was a incredible year. 2013 barely any, and then it blew up. Did we do something leading up in 2014 to encourage? Where did we market it? I mean,
Well, we
that's
passed it in 2012.
That's an unbelievable ballooning.
They're all about the same amount of rebates, and there was a couple houses that burnt.
Oh, that's
And then
right.
there's reconstruction, and there's also a house on the lake that demoed most of their house and built new to it. So there
It's
is.
not a number of projects grew, it's a few projects were just
Yeah.
really big.
Yep, and then there's sometimes a lag in receiving that. If the homeowner's doing the work themselves, it does take longer for them to complete the job. And then that lag, so that start in 2012, you start seeing the rebates coming in that we're paying out or refunding the money in 2013 is when that was starting.
Okay, Dan G?
You just
like 2
made me
years
think
later.
of another question now by your question. Is there like a max we do on it? You tell about they totally rebuilt the house. Did they have all their permit fees refunded?
There's
to them?
not a max that we do on
So
it.
if I, as a homeowner, everything fell apart and I need 15 permits, I can apply for that rebate and I get it back once it's all done? No matter how much?
We give it back when it's all done if it meets that criteria.
Yeah.
And so
You would.
we put right away on that it's eligible for the rebate.
Right.
And when we final that product out or that project out, then we refund that automatically. We send them the rebate.
So what happens in a year? 6 people decide they're just gonna tear down their houses and build new houses. Will 6 people be able to come in and get rebates on all of their new houses?
Yes. That's part of,
That would kind
of
of
the
build the budget
rebate.
too, wouldn't it?
Yeah, yeah. And this is the reason why we need to make sure we have good information. Jenny?
Good question, Dan.
And then I'll come back to Dan.
Madam Mayor, I was just going to add, my recollection is when we did this,
Yeah.
it was on the tail end of the recession.
That's right,
and
it was.
Property values were declining, and what can we do to
Yeah.
help encourage those folks, as Councilmember Keeley said,
Yeah.
to keep them from declining? And so that's why it was geared towards projects that increase the square footage, because the square footage is tied to property values, which is tied to
That's
the
right.
taxes that are paid.
Yep.
So certainly we can bring you back
Yeah.
the information, and so if those 6 people come in and get those permits, it's percentage tied to the value of the new permit. So, their permit value on a new house is going to be 2 or 3 times probably what the value of their current house is right now, presumably, right? And so the permit value is a lot higher, and we're just talking building permit plan review fee and the building permit fee, not plumbing, mechanical,
Yeah.
electrical.
Okay.
So it's just those
Thank
two
you for clarifying
types of
that.
permit.
Yeah. Dan
Mine-
Kay,
mine
yeah,
was
and
on
yours is,
plumbing, so
yeah.
mine's good.
Madam
Okay.
Mayor, if I can finish real quick.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, from an administrative standpoint, they don't make an application, right? That's too much paperwork. We just decided we mark it when it comes in, like Chris Fasty says, and then when we issue the CO, then we prepare the letter and have you sign it and send it out. So there is no application to be made. We tried to streamline this and make this as easy as possible and less staff-intensive as possible.
Okay. Dan Kay?
This is a question you may not be able to answer, but I would like to know, on average, what is the value of the permit rebate as a percentage of the improvement value?
Yeah, I asked that question of Chris early, but they didn't have that information, so they'll get that information to us.
We do need time to research that and go into the tax
Mm-hmm.
records and see what that difference would be.
When I come in for a building permit, am I giving you, like, project is a $50,000 cost, basically? I mean, do you usually get that from the applicant to say, well, we ask them, what are you gonna spend on this? What's your estimated budget that you're gonna spend on this improvement?
It's based on value of the job, and it's always going to be the same every year. We have a scale that has been since 1972 that we go to, and that's how we do our percentages. As our property increases, that's how we receive more money, or adjusted money, into our funds.
Thank you. That'd be
Okay.
great to know. I think I remember this when we did this program, that question came out. I know the percentage isn't large, but it's something. And on a bigger project, it's the dollar amount's large. It just still is not a large percentage of the cost of the project.
In that code, if I can, Madam Mayor.
Yeah, I'm going to go, Jenny,
That's
and
fine.
then back to Dan. G.
That percentage is kind of the statewide standard that we use
Mm-hmm.
for our permit fee. So it's not that we pick and choose what the fees are.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
the state standard.
Yeah, and you mentioned that at the beginning, it's state statute. Yeah. Dan G.
Well, I'm just kind of thinking, in light of this discussion, the criteria is you have to increase the square footage of your home or build an addition to your home. And I don't think that was really our intent in the beginning. Maybe I'm wrong, but
Yeah,
I think it was more to help people
It
get
was.
things done.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I can be in favor of even going forward with this until we actually have that discussion next year, and maybe start a different type program for our housing in the city itself. I mean, we're talking about $170 this year. We just had a half-hour discussion on $170.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, Jenny, because we did, remember it was it was during the recession, and we
I remember
wanted.
why we did it, but I don't
Yeah.
think we got the spirit of it in what we're doing.
Okay, Jenny.
Well, I would just add the 170, there's only 2 so far that
Yeah.
have certificates. So there may be more. We expect there to
Yeah.
be more that are wrapped up.
But even so, if it was last year, we're talking about $5,000.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah.
I think we need a little more robust program for our community than a $5,000 fund.
Yeah, maybe this program's run its life cycle, and now we need to swap.
We need to talk about
Switch it to
how do
about
we
maintenance and
transition
improvements
to
that are just
Yeah.
a better
more-
way to do this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and let's make sure we understand how much money that's going to not be in the coffers.
So my thing was I would just scrap this program and start over next year at our work sessions and develop a
Yeah.
good program.
It's in for 19.
Yeah.
You're okay with that?
I think we could just take it out in 19, and that'd probably help us with some of our budget discussions for 19 anyways.
Oh, it looks like a $10,000 budget savings in 2018.
You know what? They add up after a while.
Could be
Dan.
another 10,000 savings in
We're at
2019.
10,000 a lot of things.
Madam
I
Mayor,
have a
members of the
feeling.
council,
Jenny.
our finance director already has her hands on that, so,
Oh, gotcha.
for 2018, I'm just saying.
Already using it for.
She's looked and
Sure.
uncovered every stone
Yeah.
already, so, and she might even have some of
Well,
2019.
that's good budget management.
Based
You
on averages.
don't leave it on the table.
All right.
Apply it to something
Okay,
else.
well, so Jenny and Dana and Chris, you have good direction to move forward. Okay, Michelle.
I'm hearing you say, do not bring this policy back, let it expire at the end of the year.
Yeah.
And then we'll look at other options on some kind of permit
For
refund.
2020.
work session.
Yeah.
Give us time to talk about it
Yeah,
next year.
and give us time. And then it gives staff time to gather the information so we can make better decision.
Can't
So we
believe you
have
said it was
data.
only 10,000.
Yes, Dana.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, just a quick clarification. You're looking for this to come back to a work session, or are you looking for, like, bring the data, talk, like, do a little bit of research and bring it at a work session? Or are you talking about wanting to frame the discussion a little bit better at the all-day work session and then look at?
What, as I listen, and maybe people can chime in, is that at the all-day work session with the new information and look at a new program that may be a little bit more robust.
That's what you heard from me.
Is that what I heard?
I think so,
Yep.
yeah.
Okay, that's what I heard.
Which we could spend.
And then decide what that new program is going to look like and how much the cost is going to be, because that'll be on a 2020 budget. But I think what I heard, and everybody can, because at first it was keep the program in, and then as the discussion went out, I heard let it die in 2018. So it won't be available in 2019.
Correct. Madam Mayor,
Is
members
that
of the
what I
council.
heard from everybody?
Yeah, I'm okay with it. Yep.
Okay,
We may have some permits that we've issued where people are expecting rebates, maybe after they're finalized out in January or
grandfathered in,
February, so
my
there
mind.
may
We need
be
to honor those.
one
Yeah.
or two, if we want to honor
We need to
those,
honor
we
those.
may
Oh, we
have
need
to
to.
keep.
Yes.
So we'll do it with permits that were issued in 2018,
yeah.
and then that may be closed out by, June of 2019, so
Yeah.
there's
No.
that, okay.
You have
Our
to-
integrity, our values is that we will honor those things.
Okay.
Okay?
Got it.
Dan K.
Does that mean you need to keep some of the 2019 budget in
Yeah,
place?
and I think you guys can figure
We'll
that
have an
out and
idea.
let us,
We'll have an idea.
let us know, because it'll be in your budget, Jenny.
Yeah, it is in the inspection budget, but we'll have a better idea, now that we know where you're at, of
Yeah.
what that's going to be. If we're gonna end the program, we know what permits qualify for this,
Yeah.
to ballpark that, to let, finance director know.
Yeah,
Okay.
and the ones that are already in your
Correct.
pipeline.
Yep.
Anything else is not. Okay, great. Everybody, are you clear?
Cats don't have to have.
Jenny and Dana? Okay, Chris, you're good?
I'm good.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next item is dog licensing. I believe that's yours, council member.
It is,
uh,
and actually
Schultz.
it's pet licensing, because we also require cat
Cats.
licensings as well. And I believe we bar ferrets? If I remember
We what?
correctly? I think we do not allow ferrets in this city.
That's
If I
right.
remember correctly.
Yes.
So we can reevaluate that too, because I'm not gonna do house-to-house searches for ferrets, so.
Yeah, and we don't, we
a little
don't do
strange.
house-to-house search for ferrets, but
No.
I remember that coming in and people just not wanting to.
I think it was kind of a fad. Like, it was a fad to have them, and then it was a fad to hate
Yeah, the
them,
same
and
thing.
now it's like whatever.
Well, it's just like chickens, you know?
Yeah.
And now we have
exactly.
chickens,
Yeah.
you know, so, yeah.
So yeah, I kind of see that all as kind of a same thing. So in looking at pet licensing, and we have surrounding communities, and most notably Crystal is the latest Minnesota city, and I believe Bloomington did this as well very recently, is either greatly modifying or doing away with their pet licensing program. And the reason why they're doing this is they're finding that the only thing it does is punish a very small number of people who have their pets and then license them, and everyone else just doesn't do it either because they don't know they're supposed to do it or because they don't agree with it or that type of thing. But it doesn't have any effect whatsoever on the rates of vaccinated pets or pets receiving veterinary care. So the original intent, of course, was to make sure that pets were vaccinated.
So they don't spread disease.
Yeah, so, and so they don't have rabies and bite and all of that kind of stuff. However, since cities now know that that really hasn't had any effect on that whatsoever, and it's really only punishing a very small number of pet owners, they're just either going away with it or they're requiring a once-a-lifetime license. Like, right when you get the pet, you get a license and show proof of shots, and then you never have to again. And Burnsville has it where we have to license every year. Like, that's pretty excessive for licensing. And I believe that's how it was when I researched it and looked it up, that we are in every year license.
Every other year.
Oh yes, I think you're right. Every 2 years. Every 2 years that we license.
Okay.
So
So you're asking that we do it just once when you
Either do it
acquire your
once-
pet, so that everybody knows that your pet has all of its vaccinations.
either do it once
Vaccines.
or do away with it, because if the thought behind it was that the reason why you license pets is to make sure that they have their shots, and this policy does not drive that behavior whatsoever, why have the policy? If the policy does not do what the policy was intended, why have it?
Yeah. So Dana, do you want to have a conversation with staff and bring it back? Because I get what Kara is saying.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, we can certainly bring information back. I'm just not sure what it is we would be bringing back. Are you looking for data on the number of pets that are licensed? What kind of information
I think what Kara
would we
is
be?
saying, at least, and she can correct me if I'm wrong in understanding, is that the intent of licensing was to make sure that the animals had been vaccinated. And I don't know what it is that penalized a small number of people. I don't know what that is. Is that the people who didn't vaccinate their
No,
their
what happens
animals?
is you have to pay for the permit. And so they're saying that that's a punitive thing because you have a small number of people who are paying for a permit and most everyone else is not paying for a permit.
Yeah, because we don't know, right?
Exactly.
We don't know
an
whether
honor
they have
system.
a pet or not.
Yeah, it is. It
Okay.
is.
Yeah, and the thing is, we have a pet ordinance in town. So why don't, if we can do it just once, why is it not okay to just do it once instead of every other year? Okay,
Someone that used to have 3 dogs, now 2.
yeah.
Thanks to the new ordinance we have from years ago. Anyways, another story. Responsible pet owners get vaccinations on their pet.
Yeah.
If I go to Petco to have my dog groomed, I have to have vaccination on file. They won't let me take it. If I want to go to Camp Bow Wow to put my dogs up for the night because we're out of town, I have to have vaccinations on file to even do that. So the
industry is
itself
monitoring-
is doing the
industry is
monitoring.
monitoring itself.
And if my dog gets lost, my dogs are chipped. You scan that dog and they know exactly where those dogs belong. And responsible pet owners do that. Irresponsible pet owners, whether we have licensing or not, they may not get them vaccinated. They may not do a lot of different things. And it's, yeah, so licensing doesn't force that to happen. It's just I agree, it's a fee we pay that responsible pet owners are already doing what that fee is trying to get us to do. And so I would like to look at it as well.
Yeah, why don't we just bring back the information, why we have it, and what happens if we just have it one time?
Just
Pull it.
Yeah.
Just pull it. I don't see
Yeah.
any
Just
reason why
pull
we
it.
have it.
Yeah. Yes,
Just a
Michelle.
clarification,
Yeah.
Madam Mayor.
Yeah, you're the one who
Just a clarification, Madam
Yeah.
Mayor. The city code does license cat, dog, ferret,
Oh, we
and
do have ferret
hen.
now.
and hens, that's right.
And I believe they're all every 2 years, but the chickens may be different. They may have a different, because I think there's
Roosters.
the whole issue with the
think
neighbors
we
and
allow
that kind of
roosters.
thing.
Oh, that's
going
right.
on
I think
with
it's
it.
just a chicken license. to have a chicken, not to actually license the chicken itself.
Yeah, each chicken
It-
is just like to have
yeah,
a chicken.
because they have to have a coop.
Chicken wears a, but it is all grouped into our pet licensing. So I think we would
make
need
the
to.
chickens wear something?
I'm not saying that we require them to wear.
Where's your collar?
I'm
It
not
keeps
saying,
falling
but
off.
just like
I don't have much
I'm
neck.
not sure that you can get a ferret to wear a tag.
No, I knew,
either.
I knew we had a permit to have chickens.
Yes.
I kind of get that because of the
Because of the
neighborhood.
neighbors.
But I didn't, but I don't, but it was just a permit to have up to 4 chickens, and we
Well,
don't
and
identify
no
the chicken as being
roosters, I
licensed.
think, because
No
they,
roosters.
no
Yeah.
roosters.
So I think that's different. And maybe if it isn't, then we maybe have to
What I-
look at
Yeah,
that.
and I,
My clarification, Councilmember Gustafson, is that our city code addresses them all in our pet licensing in
well, we
one
may have to
sentence,
take a
so
look at
we
that
would
then,
have
that
to
part
tear
of
that
it.
apart a little bit.
yeah. So
would
why
be
don't they
good to
give
take.
us some
Chickens is what started
information?
this whole thing years ago, just so you know.
I remember the chicken.
Let's make sure we get the information, because the other thing is that we have to make sure that the neighbors don't come to us again with the whole thing, because right now our code does not allow roosters.
Yes.
Because they don't want the roosters cockadoodling at
They're mean.
5.
They are mean. They'll come
Yeah.
after you. You're laughing, Dan. You go into a coop sometime
Yes,
with a rooster.
Dana.
So, Madam Mayor, members of the council, just so I understand what it is we're bringing back,
Yeah.
you want us to take a look at the ordinance,
What we have.
what we have, and how
If we
potentially
don't
moving to
license, what's
one-
the impact?
Don't license, or
Don't license.
Yeah.
Because I think we already have 3 of us saying just pull
Yeah,
it.
Don't
I heard
license.
don't license.
Okay.
So if we
we
don't
don't even
license,
enforce
what's
it.
the impact, huh?
We don't enforce it because we don't go out and
No,
go,
you-
hey,
no,
Only
no,
thing get
it's
picked up
like-
and end up in our animal control.
Here's how it gets enforced, like everything else is by complaint. That's how,
Yes.
like
Or running
everything
loose.
else is by
Getting
complaint,
picked up by the pet patrol.
yeah. And
We have dog
remember,
parks.
there was a time when we also have people
Breaking those off from
complaining about other people's pets in their yard, and,
It's covered under the nuisance ordinance, not
Yep.
the.
yeah.
Yeah, we have another
So
ordinance for
those
that.
are the things that we have to make sure are covered.
Right.
Okay? The licensing, it's about animals being nuisance to their neighbors.
What do the roosters do?
They cockadoodle,
Doodle-doo.
yeah.
Oh, farmer had a farm.
Yeah.
This
They
is
do.
breaking down quick.
Okay, so everybody, okay, the dog licensing, so you're clear.
I'm
Okay,
clear
you'll
now,
bring,
thank you.
okay, thank you. Okay, the next, Michelle, you have some meetings that we have to schedule.
Just one, Madam Mayor.
Okay.
We are looking to set a special council
Canvassing.
meeting to canvass the results of the general election on November 6th. And so and the statute requires that we do that 3 to 10 days after the election is complete. So, in past election years, we have, scheduled this meeting like prior to the work session, the Tuesday after. With our new, work session schedule starting earlier now, I'm not sure if you're still comfortable with that. So I'm just asking the council
Yeah.
what their
For me.
preference would be.
Okay, yeah. Why don't we just come in, at,
4:30?
You're out
at
of town
4:30? Why don't we come in at 4:30 and do it?
Starting before.
Yeah, so that would
Okay.
be 4:30 on Tuesday, the 13th.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, works for
I
me.
will add
Okay.
that in
I
right
will
now.
add that to
Okay.
your schedule.
So 4:30 on Tuesday the 13th. Okay, done. Okay, Bill, any reports? Dan?
Nope, nothing meets till next month. Actually, I have Ames tomorrow, and then broadband canceled this month, so.
Okay. Kara?
All good.
Dan?
Nothing, no.
Okay. And for me, with CBB, working on a strategic plan, the performance evaluation for the executive director, and still holding nice and steady on all of our visitors to Burnsville. So that's all I have. Dana, anything else?
nothing.
Michelle, anything else? With that, we stand adjourned by acclamation.